Hey everyone, it's Sunny with Parents on Demand. Thanks so much for being with us today. We are asking ourselves kind of a tough question, and it's a little bit of a faux pas, I understand. But the question is, should you re-release your podcast content? So for the episodes that you've already put out there, is it okay to take those episodes down, or at least one or two episodes, and repost them at another time? That's the question we're asking ourselves today. I do have some experience with this, and I'm going to share that in a little bit. But let's first talk about, why would you want to do this? I mean, really, this boils down to, how often should we really be releasing content to our audience, and how important is it to keep that schedule consistent? You might get a bunch of different answers if you talk to the experts in podcasting about this. But what I will tell you is that unless you have a huge show with a huge following, like your Serial or something like that, and you have advertising dollars behind it, marketing dollars behind it, 99% of podcasts out there do need to release on a consistent basis, because that's how we grow our audiences. We don't have huge marketing budgets, but what we can rely on is people accessing our content on a regular basis and knowing that each week, or if you're putting out content 2 times a week, however you're putting it out, that stays consistent and your audience knows what to expect. This does a couple things that are really important for podcasts. It keeps your show at the top of the search results. So I'm talking about like on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, places like that. They are going to be pulling the most recent content. And if you have not put out episodes in a long time, your show is going to slowly sink lower and lower on that list until people really can't find you nearly as well. So you want to stay at the top of those search results. And that also gives your show this fresh vibe, that audiences want to see. If your show hasn't put out something in a long time, even if it's evergreen content, as a new listener coming to your show, I might think, oh, they don't really care about their podcast. They haven't put out content in a long time. So it kind of gives this stale approach to podcasting, which we certainly don't want. And so that would be another reason to do it, so it looks fresh for your audience. And the last point is that this is really what advertisers want. And I know not everybody watching this video cares about advertisers, but if you are trying to make money with your podcast, I have gone through this personally, where I haven't been releasing content and advertisers have passed me by because they want stuff that's relevant. They want them to know that week after week, or again, whenever your release schedule is, that you are consistently putting out content. So if advertising is in your future, you would like it to be, that's another good reason to constantly be releasing new podcasts, new episodes, right? And so my personal take on this, and you may have already guessed this already, is that yes, if we were to answer that question, it is fine. In fact, it's better than fine. I'm going to tell you why in a second, that you re-release podcast episodes. I do have some rules that I personally abide by in doing this, but if anyone tries to tell you that that's bad for the industry or whatever, again, I'm going to tell you my own story, and that's probably going to change your mind as to what you think when it comes to re-releasing episodes. Here's something else to consider. Bloggers have been doing this for years. So think about a blog post. And this happens a lot with websites like online magazines and things like that. They will take down a blog post. They might update it with some new information, and then they'll put it back up there with a different release date. So this is nothing new. You could very easily change up your intro for your podcast. I'm talking about like the description, the written description. It's kind of harder to go in there and change up the audio content. However, I will say, if you're doing dynamic ads, or if you have access to a dynamic program, you can totally build in segments that can be taken in and out just to give your show an overall fresh feel. So it's not impossible to do that, but it is a little bit more tricky. Let me tell you a little bit about my personal story with re-releasing podcasts. So I started, it wasn't my first podcast, but it was my first podcast as it related to parenting content. I released 3. I actually started 3 podcasts at once because I'm crazy. But I released my first 3 podcasts in 2012. Then in 2013, I released my 4th podcast. And then I added podcast number 5 in 2014. Okay. So by 2014, I had 5 weekly podcasts, which means I was releasing 5 new episodes per week, which is crazy, right? And as you can probably guess, that totally led to burnout. And I was just tired. I was tired of the grind. And I wasn't even hosting all those episodes, but I was producing all of it and I was editing all the shows pretty much and putting them out there and promoting them. And so it led to burnout. 5 episodes a week led to burnout. And I cut back at that point. I cut back to releasing episodes every other week. So perhaps for 2 of my shows that would release one week, and then the next week I would release 3 other episodes. And then I had to cut back even further, and that led me to only releasing episodes if they were sponsored. So I kind of had to justify it a little bit more. And then I had a really good sponsor for a while, and then that sponsor left and I didn't have that money. And then I quit producing episodes altogether. And within 6 months, this is the truth, within 6 months, my audience started, I think I had half the audience that I normally would have in 6 months. So it took 6 months to reduce my audience by half. It was slowly shrinking. And I was kind of devastated by all this, right? Because I actually had signed on with an ad agency and they were starting to sell ads for my show. And they were saying, listen, your numbers are just going down and down and down. Didn't matter how much I promoted it on social media or what newsletters I sent out, like nothing was working to increase engagement. And I knew deep down, I knew if I were to start re-releasing old episodes, because many of my shows had 100 or more episodes that were part of the podcast, right? If I were to start re-releasing those, I knew I could build my audience up again. So that's what I did. In 2016, I decided to start re-releasing old episodes. And let me tell you what's happened. So it's now 2019. Today, my audience is twice the size it was at its peak when I was releasing new episodes. And my shows are continuing to grow. Now, you may say, yeah, but Sunny, there's more people listening to podcasts. And I'm sure there's other factors that play into this. But my point being, my ad spots right now are usually filled. And I'm making right now a couple $1,000s a month, I'll just be honest, with my podcasting content. And I am not releasing any new content. Okay, that's pretty amazing. Now, I worked my tail off in the beginning. It was probably 2 years before I made any money with my podcasts. And that was tough. I think my first advertiser I had on board was a $500 ad. And those were few and far between. And trust me, I was doing like flips and everything when that person said, yeah, let's go ahead and try this. The other thing to think about here is you don't have to go cold turkey, right? You can say, I'm going to, let's say you've got a weekly show. You can say, okay, I'm going to do 2 new episodes this month and I'm going to re-release 2 other episodes. So maybe weeks 1 and 3 are brand new content. Weeks 2 and 4 are re-released episodes. So you don't have to go all in or all out with this, right? You can kind of mix it in there. And I think that's more important that you take the time to re-release something than just letting a week go by without anything. Again, advertisers don't like it. Your audience really doesn't like it. The next recommendation I have is make sure if you're going to release your episodes, have a goal, right? Don't just go in this and kind of wander around, not really knowing what your plan is. You need to stay focused. When I first started doing this, my plan was to only re-release content until I could get my numbers back up again. I could get more advertising dollars to fund the new content. That was my original goal. And then when I got more advertising dollars, honestly, that's about the time that I was starting the network. And I was like, wow, my time is now focused on the network, not so much in creating my own content for my podcast. So then my goal changed again. So my goals have changed. And that's completely fine. In fact, I'm entering a new season, if you will, where I'm looking at my podcast episodes as a whole. How comprehensive are all of these episodes? What areas am I missing content in? And just now, after more than 2 years of just re-releasing episodes, I'm now starting to go back and record new episodes and kind of slide them in, just kind of like what I said before. So maybe 3 out of 4 episodes in a month are re-released episodes, and 1 week is a brand new episode. So I'm starting to work some new content back in there. Point being, have a goal. It's okay if your goal changes, but just kind of know what your plan is with all of this. And the last point that I have is, and this is just being real with everything, it is going to get a little tedious. Take down an episode, copy, paste, paste in new embed codes. It may get a little tedious. There are ways that you can be creative even if you are just re-releasing content. Think about the different ways you can promote the episode on social media. Perhaps create a different audiogram. That's available for members of our network for free. Think about different ways. Maybe you can rewrite your intro again, kind of like what people do with blog posts. How can you change it up a little bit? Perhaps use a different image with it, things like that. Change up the episode description. Just make it a little bit more unique. You can add different things, like I said earlier, with dynamic ads, just to kind of freshen it up a bit, and that will definitely help. So we have answered the question, should you repurpose, and by repurpose, I mean re-release your podcast episodes? I think it is a viable option if you are not able to stay on a consistent schedule. If something else comes up, or you just know this isn't a busy season because you're doing a book, or it's the end of the year and you don't really want to record new episodes, like you're human, it is okay to release that content. You can continue to make money if you're making money with your shows. And if you do it right, your audience is going to be understanding. And it has been very profitable for my shows, and it has kept me sane over the last 7-8 years in producing content for parents. So I hope that helped, guys. If you have any questions about this and how you can do it in your show, please let me know, and I'm happy to help.